Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 1992 Chrysler Lebaron Convertible. Up front is a 3.0 liter V6, and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now I am super excited to be driving this Lebaron because I've always had a fascination with Lebarons. I drove a 1985 in 2022, and whenever someone says Chrysler from the 80s and 90s, my thought immediately goes to the Lebaron. This car was so iconic for me in this era, and I'm excited to share this convertible example with you today. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle, you can head on over to my website, zackpraedel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. But let's get back to that 3-liter V6 under the hood. Well, this was the upgraded engine that you could get from Chrysler at the time. There were two engines offered, 492, which was the 2.5-liter inline-4, and the 3-liter V6. This engine is actually from and produced by Mitsubishi. So back in this era, Chrysler and Mitsubishi were together with Diamond Star Motors, and so we always think of Eclipses and Eagle Talons and things like that, but it actually expanded a lot more to vehicles like this, getting the 3-liter V6 from Mitsubishi. Like I said, paired to it is a 4-speed automatic. This transmission has been rebuilt at least once. Very, very common issue on these cars for the transmissions to go out. And pretty much any Chrysler product from the 80s through the 2000s, expect transmission issues. They just couldn't seem to get it right for nearly 3 decades. And the story's the same here in this 92 Lebaron. Last but not least, the Lebaron is, of course, front-wheel drive. So how does it feel to drive the Lebaron? Well, the 3-liter V6 has some surprising pop to it. It is quick, and it's very fun to drive. The V6 tugs you along, which I just wasn't expecting out of an older Lebaron. It's like finding out the lunch lady's a jiu-jitsu master. Pretty wild thing to learn, but it is fun. Visibility is pretty good, besides the rear, but that's fine. Convertible top, you're fine. And the ride is a little compromised, but this car is 32 years old this year, so I can't really knock it too hard for that. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 4 gauges. Off to the left is my coolant temperature and battery voltage. In the center is my speedometer, and off to the right is my fuel. I do not get a tachometer here in the Lebaron Convertible. And around the gauge cluster, we do have our headlight settings and our wiper settings. No stalks, just buttons. Very, very 80s here around dashboard. On the steering wheel, we have our horn buttons as well as cruise control down in the center middle. Really like that look there. Off to the left, we do have a climate control vent. Very nice to see that. And moving on to the door, we have our power mirrors and power windows. We get this interesting mixed fabric door card, sort of this hard plastic up top, but then this nice softer material in the center. Really enjoyed that attention to detail. Moving into the center, we get this long black strip that is not only our warning lights, and it says Lebaron all the way off to the right. I love that. Then we get 2 climate control vents and our climate controls themselves. Very basic here. High, low, temperature, where to send it, on, off for the rear defroster, which it does have a rear defroster in the convertible top. Very nice to see that. And then we have an aftermarket radio, 2 shelves, and the world's smallest cup holder. We will still do a big friggin' bottle test here in the Lebaron Convertible, but if you have the gift of sight, you could obviously tell immediately that this is a fail. Then we have the shifter. It is missing a little plastic part where you wouldn't be able to see down into it, but pretty standard shifter, nothing too crazy here, although I don't really recall this for a very long era from Chrysler, so sort of short-lived shifter here if my memory serves. Handbrake off to the right, and our convertible top options down below. So this does have a power folding top. However, this car is so old. My rule of thumb is that really anything over 15 years old, power top wise, I try not to use because it has a good chance of breaking. And the story is the same here because the owner did try to put the top down and it ripped. So we are leaving the top up for today's video. I apologize, but that's just the way it goes with older cars. Center console has some coin holders in it and is rather small, and the seats are actually very comfortable. Now, these are seat covers on them, but the cloth below them looks very similar. Could give you a little quick shot right here. That's what the cloth looks like. But they are comfy. You sink into them a little bit. You know, the Lebaron was a more luxury-oriented vehicle, and the seats definitely reflect that. I don't know about the rest of the build quality, but the seats at least are pretty luxurious. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats. So let's go do a back seat review.
Oh, come on.
Just got pricked with a little shard of glass. That's fun. We're in the back of the LeBaron convertible, and it's pretty terrible. Couple reasons for that. First of all, don't have a whole lot of leg room. The seats are not very long, and I have a long bottom, and so that doesn't really agree with that. I do have, I'll be honest with you guys, I don't know what's over here. If this is a weird ashtray or what. I'm not from this era. I don't know what these are. So if anyone knows what these are, please leave a comment with the timestamp. Use this timestamp right here up on the screen at the bottom or whatever. Use that timestamp and tell me what the heck these things are. I have no idea. Also, while we're over here, these windows do roll down, or at least they did when the car was new. The owner of this LeBaron says that he's owned about 50 LeBarons throughout time. And he said he's had 4% of them have had working rear windows. And one of those he had to fix himself. So he's only ever purchased 1 out of 50 that had working little corner windows. So these go out all the time. It's just an issue with these cars. You can't really do much about it. Let's hop into the very back and take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space. All right, around the back of the LeBaron. Little key in there. One key for the whole car, which is very nice. And because of that convertible top, we don't get a whole lot of space. Here it is, pretty deep well for a spare tire, but yeah, not a whole lot back here. This is interesting. A little sticker here, lockout on, something scratched off, release lockout. Interesting. But there it is. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I prefer the earlier generation of the LeBaron. However, I don't think that this is a bad looking car. I do really like it. And it is that sort of, transitional period that we're going to talk about in a second, where it's sort of 80s, sort of 90s, and I love that fusion of two of my favorite decades. I think overall, it's fine, and it does the job, and I like the nice red color. Also, shout out to this car dealer down in Shelbyville, Illinois. I don't know when this car was sold there, but I used to go to Lake Shelbyville every summer as a kid. Shout out to Big Weenies. Shout out to Lake Shelbyville and all 27 miles of that beautiful, beautiful glass. But with all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving a more modern LeBaron than what I previously had driven here on the channel? Well, this definitely feels less elegant, less regal, less spacious, just less than the 85 LeBaron that I drove. I think the 85 LeBaron really hit its stride and was able to maintain the big size luxury vehicle feel in the smaller chassis that the oil crisis was forcing it to have. I think this does feel smaller for sure, and it's just less impressive, I guess. But as I mentioned with the looks, this is an interesting transitional period because there are things in here that still feel very 80s. The horn buttons and the low slung grips on the steering wheel. The looks look like it was boxy and someone just went crazy with the angle grinder on this thing and rounded every hard edge off. Even look at the interior vents. 5 years before, they would have been perfect rectangles, but now they're smooth. It's almost like someone took a 1985 LeBaron and set it in the oven at about 130 degrees just to round it out a little bit. Not fully melted, it's not a gooey glop on the floor, but it's just a little bit smoother, and that was sort of taking place during that era, a more smoothing of the body lines. However, Chrysler's unreliability still shows through. Like I mentioned with those rear windows, that is atrocious and it plagues every single LeBaron. The transmission will go out on you at some point if it hasn't already. Now there are beeps and squeaks in here from misaligned panels, and I get it. This car is 32 years old. I can't really talk about factory build quality there. But in terms of reliability, ask anyone that's owned a LeBaron and they probably have a decently long receipt from their last auto checkup. But all of that doesn't matter. Here we are today, enjoying looking at and playing around with a 1992 LeBaron, something that a lot of you watching probably have somewhat nostalgia with. And this car at the very beginning of its life was a budget rental car. So if you lived, well actually no, if you didn't live, if you came to Illinois, actually, I don't even know if this was originally an Illinois car. If you drove a red LeBaron convertible on vacation and rented one from Budget Rent-A-Car 32 years ago, you might have driven this exact car. That's a fun little piece of history for you. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Carl for letting me take out his LeBaron. He's been so wonderful to work with. I have driven so many of his vehicles in the past, and I'm sure I'll drive more in the future. He's great to work with. I always look forward to it, and I appreciate him very, very much. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.